Every day, social housing residents are having their complaints heard. Yours can be too. There's help to make things right. Find out more at socialhousingcomplaints.campaign.gov.uk.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Minutes after 7 on Monday, February the 21st. Coming up today, a quotes moment of pride. That's what the Prime Minister will call it, as he calls on the nation to get back to work. The end of self-isolation, free test limited. It's time to live with the virus again, putting England very much at the front of the return to work. We'll give you full details on that. Of course, also high up on the Prime Minister's agenda is the crisis in Ukraine. He was speaking yesterday to the BBC.
I think what he wants to see is NATO push back. He's going to see the exact opposite. If he thinks he's going to get less NATO as a result of this, he's totally wrong. He's going to get more NATO.
Talking about working, the Queen will work from home, but what an example. She tests positive at age 95, but says she's determined to carry on working. This example that she sets. House prices see the biggest monthly rise for 20 years. I'll give you the figures on there and some geographical breakdown. Also, talking about geographical breakdown, 3 named storms in the case of just 1 week ravage parts of the UK. I'll be asking you as you wake up after possibly a very blowy weekend. We'll be working out how you put in your insurance claims and, of course, telling you just how bad it might be. Storm Franklin is the latest one to blow through. And the sad death of the man behind helping build careers of stars such as...
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too.
In a quarter of a mile, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
Age 31, an appreciation of an all too short career. Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. At last, it looks as though the moment is within touching distance.
Keep right.
Regulations. Boris Johnson announcing late the very last COVID freedom. From Thursday, if it's positive, you will no longer be required by law to self-isolate. The PM insists.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
The efficacy of the vaccine rollout, particularly the booster rollout, which we did voluntarily, by the way. You know, if you compare most other European countries, it was amazing what the British people did. We've reached a stage where we think you can shift the balance away from state mandation, away from banning certain courses of action, compelling certain courses of action.
We're looking at booster jabs for the elderly and vulnerable later in the year, but free COVID tests are being scrapped. Only if you are deemed clinically vulnerable will you be able to get a free test, not least because these free tests are costing the taxpayer a lot of money.
I want to make sure we have capability.
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
But we don't need to keep, for instance, on testing, we don't need to keep spending at a rate of £2 billion a month, which is what we were doing in January.
The PM is expected to say workers should have the confidence to return to the office when he appears in the House of Commons later today. As he puts it, marks a moment of pride for this country nearly 2 years on from the very first restrictions being introduced. One person leading by example is the Queen. Our 95-year-old monarch tested positive for COVID yesterday, but has continued with light duties. Nikki Henderson trains her racehorses.
It was going to be tough today. We always knew it was going to be tough, and I must have to say that obviously we're all...
Continue on M4 for 9 miles.
That's a bit of, I don't know if that's COVID medicine, but it's
Hopefully a bit of a lift, yes.
Nikki Henderson there concluding Theo Usherwood's report. Right, more on the economy with Dr. Jared Lyons in a moment, but let's just get into the aspect as regards, obviously, it's front page news that the Queen has COVID, but the important thing to say, it would appear that even at the age of 95, she's dealing with it in the stoic fashion one would assume. Details now from Camilla Tominey, who, of course, is associate editor at the Daily Telegraph. She has a big piece across page 3 this morning. She's also on the LBC team sheet Sunday afternoons from 4. Camilla joins me now. What do we understand to be the level of infection or how badly affected the Queen is? Morning, Camilla.
Morning, Nick. Well, Buckingham Palace is saying that she's suffering from mild cold-like symptoms, and their statement yesterday very much played it down, said that she would be continuing with light duties, and actually a few hours after they released that statement, she then sent her warm congratulations to the women and men's curling team over in Beijing. So it seems as if there is this sense that it's business as usual, and once again she epitomises this sort of keep calm and carry on mentality that's become her trademark.
What will happen around Her Majesty now? Will a bubble be formed again, Camilla?
Well, they've always been in a form of bubble. I mean, she's got her closest aides and they don't really change, and they've been in that kind of pared down system since March 2020, and the Duke of Edinburgh was enveloped into that, so they'll take every precaution. Equally, of course, she has the access to the best medical care. There are some concerns about her mobility as far as her health's concerned. It was only on Wednesday that she received a couple of military visitors to Windsor Castle and basically told them that she couldn't move and she was sort of quite uncomfortable on a walking stick. But again, as we all have to reiterate, she's 95 and it's easy to take that for granted, but she's got a very busy year ahead with the Platinum Jubilee celebration. So the piece I've written today in the Telegraph is basically making the point, look, she isn't invulnerable and care needs to be taken to preserve her health and energy, I think, ahead of what is going to be a jam-packed summer.
I tell you what, when you make this point in your piece today in the Telegraph, she's had, come April, she's had a hell of a 12-month period, hasn't she?
Really difficult time. So the Prince Andrew saga, losing her husband, now Prince Charles and his charity embroiled in a furore over the Cash for Honours allegations. Of course, the departure of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex a bit earlier on in the pandemic hasn't helped things either. So yeah, I think she's had a very difficult time, and we underestimate the impact that that's had on her, I think, foolishly.
Read all about it in today's Daily Telegraph. Camilla Tominey, thank you. Associate editor on the title. Also, my LBC colleagues, Sunday afternoons from 10 after 7. Right, back to the broader picture, which of course affects so many of us here in England. I stress again because of devolution. Dr. Jared Lyons is Chief Economic Strategist at NetWealth and served as Economic Advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Mayor of London. Doctor, you know the Prime Minister very well. You worked with him as Mayor. I have to say to you, I thought there was a certain spring in his voice yesterday, a certain degree of pride. He's reaching out. He's almost got to the finishing line. Morning, Doctor.
Well, good morning. Great to be on the show. Yes, the removal of remaining restrictions, I think, is positive for the country and also positive for the economy. In terms of the impact on the economy, it's hard to say, even though in full terms we can't quantify it exactly. The removal of restrictions should be positive, but there are so many other influences at play, particularly in the next few months, such as the cost of living squeeze. That being said, we know from the last 24 months, Nick, that when there were restrictions and the lockdowns were in place, that restricted people's ability to spend was negative for the economy and for growth. And as we've seen over the last 24 months, and as we're likely to see now, removing restrictions and easing them is and should be positive for spending confidence and for growth.
Could he have gone further, faster? Is his pace about right? Has he gone too soon? Gerald?
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the key point. It depends really on the path of the virus, including new variants. I think the data did suggest that he could have moved quicker, but I think he's been naturally cautious through this virus and through the pandemic, influenced heavily by the scientists. Some people, for instance, still think he's actually moving too quickly at the moment.
Do you?
I think, no, I don't. I think the data does show that we've seen a peak. The number of people infected has come down. Vaccinations and boosters should provide greater protection. Of course, the legal obligation to stay at home if you have the virus and if you're positive is almost now replaced by a moral obligation to stay at home if you don't feel well. And just as people should stay at home if they're impacted by other things. But the impact on the economy, Nick, very much does depend on how people now behave. And that also is influenced by consumer and business confidence. as people return to work, and some people may have a hybrid existence now, working partly from home, going to the office, there should be a rebound in retail footfall. Hospitality and other sectors that were impacted in the last few years should recover. Younger people are more likely maybe to be going out and spending, if they have the money, of course.
Yeah,
so
good.
certain sectors should recover. The economy now is back to its pre-crisis level, but as we know, in the next few months we've got a cost of living squeeze because of higher inflation, rising energy costs, and also higher taxes. The Chancellor gives a keynote speech this Thursday. So there are other influences at play, but in terms of the vaccination boosters and removing of restrictions, all of that in itself should be positive for spending confidence and the economy.
Lastly, in a sentence if you would, Gerard, he's also going to talk about the drive to get people back to their offices or their workplaces, accepting, of course, as you mentioned, a hybrid model. Now, how easy might that be to prize some folk out of their front rooms?
Well, obviously, remember, lots of sectors, people didn't have the choice. Many people had to go to the office or to work or to their workplace, wherever it may be. For those people who've had the choice up to now, I think it might take some time, but it requires the more senior people in organisations to show the way and to actually lead the way. Younger people, I know from my children, they're keen to actually work from the office because they can learn new skills. So that should be a positive, but it might take some time.
Thank you, Gerard. Dr. Gerard Lyons, Chief Economic Strategist at Netwealth. 14 after 7. Let's get your voices on the radio. That's what we're about in the morning. Delhi in West Bromwich. Delhi, are you celebrating? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. I've spoken to you a few times before.
Good to have you on. Thank you.
I am CEV, so I am like, little buttercup.
Right. Just remind everybody, that means you're in the vulnerable sector, but just remind us.
Clinically extremely vulnerable.
Clinically, that's right. Yeah,
the last
clinically
time I spoke to you, I hadn't had COVID.
Right.
And since I have, and now I've lost the use of my legs, I have to walk with a crutch.
Right.
And
is that likely to return, or is that feared it will be permanent?
They don't know. No one knows. They don't know. And, basically, I think, okay, fine.
Well, how do you react to the news? You turn on LBC this morning and there are people saying, we're all going back to work in England, we're all going back to work. Do you think, thank God for that? Are you nervous? What goes through your heart, Debbie?
I'm nervous.
Tell me why you're nervous.
The masks have gone and the things that could, like the little things that could stop it. I don't mind people going back to work. I think going back to work is great.
I'm terribly sorry you've been ill, but when can masks, when would we ever be able to take masks off though, Delhi, if we don't do it now?
Well, it needs to become properly endemic, and it's not properly endemic. It's kind of just floating around. The daily death was...
Keep right at the fork.
On COVID was 187 deaths a day. That's like a jumbo jet. If Boeing was letting a jumbo jet fall out of the sky...
Continue on M25 south for 1.5 miles.
A jet, there's got to be fair there with the two. With an Airbus will letting the two go out of the sky.
Are you saying that you're only going to allow it when it's the size of a minibus then, or something like that, where it's 8 or 9 feet?
I just think we need to just be a bit... They promised HEPA filters for schools. They haven't done it. I'm a teacher. I'm going back to work next week.
Right.
So I'm expecting to be,
Will you wear your mask in school, in class?
Oh, well, I have a face shield.
You have a face... And do how old are the children you teach?
11 to 16, and they're just going to have to deal with it because I'm not risking it.
Do they all wear face coverings of some sort?
I don't know. Nick, because I haven't been there since August, but I know my son's got COVID.
And what's the subject you teach, Delhi?
I teach music.
Music. Let us know how you get on. Are you looking forward to it, in a sentence, going back?
I want to go back to work. I just want to go back to work safely.
We all do, Delhi. I hope it is safe. Thank you for that. More reactions coming up on that story over the weekend, of course.
In half a mile, at junction 14, use the left 2 lanes to take the A3113 exit to Heathrow Airport.
It's not just get your big coat and your wellies on anymore. This is like, actually, no, just wanting to finish now.
No longer big coat and wellies, we're off to Manchester after the 7:16 LBC News headlines. Thomas Watts.
President Biden has accepted in principle...
Use the left 2 lanes to exit at junction 14, then keep right.
Rail operators have warned passengers to avoid travel if they can as Storm Franklin sweeps across the UK.
Keep right.
Set to scrap England's coronavirus self-isolation rules. LBC weather, blustery conditions through the morning with brighter spells developing later.
Continue for half a mile.
7 Celsius.
LBC travel.
Joanne Webb on the M25 clockwise. The QE2 bridge is closed because of the strong wind, so traffic's using the Dartford Tunnel instead. There are delays clockwise from junction 29 at the A127 and anti-clockwise.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto Airport Way, A3113.
Held on the M25 clockwise at junction 5 at the M26. That's just reopened, but there are delays of at least half an hour. Now, most train companies are running a severely reduced service because of the bad weather and asking their passengers only to travel if it's essential. At Waterloo, all departures have been cancelled until at least 9 o'clock this morning, and Thameslink can't run between Blackfriars and Sutton.
This is LBC.
Hi there. Right now, I'm in the left speaker. But now, I've switched to the right speaker. And with help from BP Pulse, switching to an electric vehicle can be this simple too. Now in both speakers, let life flow from the people you know, with over 8,000 BP Pulse charging points where and when you need them, including ultra-fast charging to get you back on the open road as soon as possible. Find out more about EV charging from BP in the right speaker. Search BP Pulse.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
Save pounds at the pump at Morrison's with 7p off every litre of fuel when you spend £40 or more in store until Sunday the 27th of February. So fill up your trolley and fill up your tank for less. Morrison's. Make good things happen.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the second exit onto Southern Perimeter Road.
Details collect by 27th of February, redeemed by 6th of March.
At AAT, we help leading organizations like Network Rail build stronger, diverse finance teams through our accounting apprenticeships.
An apprenticeship with AAT gives that technical side, but also the softer side that's really going to help someone progress their career. Apprenticeships offer both on-the-job training and classroom-based learning as well. They've got that optimism and drive to move things forward. We've seen it's been a great success. We actually have a 100% retention rate. We're proud to partner with AAT to help build and grow the future leaders in finance.
Exit the roundabout onto Southern Perimeter Road.
To strengthen your business at aat.org.uk/build the future.
In 200 yards, at Western Perimeter Road roundabout, take the second exit and stay on Southern Perimeter Road.
Troubleshooting, less idle commuting, more...
Exit the roundabout onto Southern Perimeter Road. Continue on Southern Perimeter Road for 1.5 miles. quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the third exit onto Beacon Road. Exit the roundabout onto Beacon Road. In 100 yards, at the roundabout, take the second exit onto Stanwell Road. Exit the roundabout onto Stanwell Road. In a quarter of a mile, turn right onto Great Southwest Road, A30. Turn right onto Great Southwest Road, A30. In a quarter of a mile, at Clockhouse Roundabout, take the first exit onto Staines Road, A315. In 200 yards, turn left onto Hatton Road. Turn left onto Hatton Road. In 300 yards, at the roundabout, continue straight to stay on Hatton Road. In 300 yards, turn right onto New Road. Take the second right onto New Road. In a quarter of a mile, turn left onto Bethany Way. Take the next left onto Bethany Way. In 200 yards, turn left onto Staines Road, A315. the next left onto Staines Road, A315. Continue on Staines Road for half a mile. In a quarter of a mile, turn right onto Shaftesbury Avenue. Take the next right onto Shaftesbury Avenue, then turn left onto Roslin Avenue. Take the next left onto Roslin Avenue, then you will arrive at your destination.